The stars were quiet the night they invaded Earth. No declaration, no warning, just silence, then fire. Cities vanished in seconds. Oceans boiled under energy blasts. Humanity's cries echoed through the ash-filled air, but no help came, because there was no one left to help. The Galactic Order, an empire of over 1,000 alien civilizations, had deemed Earth a threat, not because of what we did, but because of what we might become. They struck fast, efficient, emotionless, and they thought that was it. But Earth wasn't dead. Humanity wasn't gone, because they had only hit the surface. Under the Arctic ice, deep in old war bunkers, they woke up monsters. Not creatures, machines. Black ships forged in Earth's last great war, never launched, hidden for the day when extinction knocked too loud. They were dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city, built with tech that the Galactic Order hadn't even dreamed of yet. We never reached for the stars to explore. We reached to survive. And when the first dreadnought called Judgment rose from beneath the ice, the world below held its breath. No presidents, no committees, just one man standing on the command bridge, a general long thought dead who'd once ordered the firebombing of rogue colonies for daring to resist planetary law. A man who didn't believe in mercy. He looked up at the empty sky and gave a single command. Burn every star that looked down on us and stayed silent. And the hunt began. The Galactic Order didn't even know what hit them first. Their surveillance drones around Mars just disappeared. The scouts they sent after went dark in less than 10 seconds. Then a message echoed across their entire network, crackling with static and rage. "This is Earth. We're not extinct. We're just angry." 10 dreadnoughts jumped through slipspace and emerged over their border planets. These ships didn't ask for terms. They didn't wait for surrender. They annihilated defenses in moments and left blackened wreckage in orbit. The Order panicked. They had faced wars before, uprisings, pirate fleets, even species extinction, but they had never faced something that hunted. Each planet the dreadnoughts visited, they left a message carved into the ground in plasma fire. You should have killed us all. Back on Earth, the survivors were rallying. Underground bunkers turned into fortresses. Families trained their children with rifles instead of books. The trauma of loss turned into a religion of revenge. The general didn't care about peace talks. One of the surviving world leaders, an old man crippled by the orbital bombardments, asked if there could ever be peace. The general just stared at him. You want peace with something that called us an infestation. We're not negotiating with things that see us as bugs. He had a son once, the general. Gone now, vaporized when the Galactic Order leveled Brazil. He never cried, not even once. His tears had burned away the day the first alien foot stepped on Earth soil and laughed. The aliens weren't laughing anymore. By the time Earth's dreadnoughts reached the galactic capital, the stars themselves seemed to vanish. People below looked up and saw only the metal bellies of warships blotting out their sky. No diplomacy, no warning, only wrath. The capital planet of the Galactic Order, Velithar Prime, was the heart of 1,000 worlds. Towering spires pierced golden skies, and floating cities shimmered above silver oceans. The Order's elite lived here, wrapped in arrogance and the illusion of permanence. They believed war was something that happened far away, on primitive planets or in distant colonies. That illusion shattered the second Earth's dreadnoughts appeared. First came the interference, communications dead, satellites ripped from orbit like paper. Then the sound, a low rumble across the atmosphere. Not thunder, not wind. The atmosphere itself groaned as 10 city-sized ships tore into real space above Velithar. The sky turned black. People panicked. Escape ships launched in chaos, colliding mid-air, trailing fire. The planetary defense grid activated with reflexive terror. Thousands of plasma turrets fired into the sky, their beams barely scratching the dreadnought's hardened plating. Inside the Judgment, the general watched in silence. He stood alone at the command rail, arms crossed, eyes hollow. His officers waited for orders, but none came. He wasn't ready to speak. Not yet. He wanted them to feel it first. That same helplessness Earth had felt. And they did. The Order's High Chancellor, a wrinkled amphibian creature with translucent skin, screamed into the galactic broadcast relay. "We surrender. This is a misunderstanding. Earth was targeted by accident. Please!" The general raised his hand. One of the officers turned a dial. Broadcast off. "No more lies," the general muttered. "No more misunderstandings." Then he spoke the order. "Glass the gardens." The dreadnoughts moved in unison. Dozens of magnetically accelerated rods, long thin spears of tungsten alloy, launched from the ships and pierced the surface. They hit the central biospheres, the gardens, parks, and cultural sanctuaries of Velitha Prime. Massive fireballs rose, forests vaporized, art and history turned to ash. This wasn't military destruction. This was symbolic. Earth wanted them to know. Nothing they held sacred would be spared. Inside one of the other dreadnoughts, a pilot watched the destruction unfold and whispered to himself, "They thought we'd beg." He was a veteran, one of the few who had survived the initial orbital strikes on Earth. He still had burns across his arms, still heard his daughter's screams when he slept. Now, every city that fell under their fire felt like balance returning to the universe. Back on Velitha, panic turned to horror. The Order's citizens, unarmed and ignorant of war, realized too late that their leaders had invited this apocalypse. Protests became riots, and their cities, built on pride, crumbled under their own weight. A desperate squadron of alien battleships arrived from a nearby system. They charged into the darkened sky, their hulls gleaming with desperation. But the dreadnoughts didn't even slow. One of them, the Graveheart, launched its nano-cloud, a black swarm of programmable dust that shredded ship after ship in silent precision. Not even wreckage remained, just silence. The general finally spoke again. "We warned them. We waited. Now we finish it." A captain near him, scar across one eye, prosthetic arm trembling, stepped forward. "General, should we give them a chance to evacuate the young, the non-combatants?" The general looked at him, as if the word chance was foreign. He pointed to the holoscreen showing Earth's devastation. "Did they ask us if our children deserved to live?" The captain said nothing. The Order had made one mistake, one critical, irreversible misjudgment. They thought Earth was weak because we were quiet. They thought no one would come. They forgot what humans become when we have nothing left to lose. And now the stars themselves hid from Earth's wrath. The fires still burned across Velitha Prime. Whole continents were blackened now. Billions of alien lives vaporized. Every scream, every sob, every plea. It all fell on ears that had already buried their dead back on Earth. The dreadnoughts held position above the smoldering capital, like executioners waiting for the final nod. Inside Judgment, the general stared at a holographic feed of the destruction. His face was unreadable. He hadn't moved in hours, not even to eat or rest. Vengeance was a fuel far more potent than sleep. "Status on the anomaly?" he asked quietly. The bridge officer nodded grimly. "It's ready, sir. Locked in the vault, awaiting activation code." The general didn't respond. Not right away. He walked slowly toward the command altar in the center of the bridge, a cold slab of steel where Earth's last failsafe had been embedded years ago. It was never meant to be used. It had no name in any language. The scientists who built it simply called it the last argument of man. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't even a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a planet killer on a quantum level, something that could collapse the fabric of matter, rendering the laws of physics useless in a controlled radius. It didn't just destroy, it unmade. It had been banned by every Earth government, locked away beneath miles of ice, sealed by code and oath. The general was one of only 3 men who had ever known where it was buried. The other 2 were dead, burned in the first wave. "Bring it online," he said. "Sir, once we use this—" The officer's voice wavered. "I know." The general snapped. "The galaxy will remember us not as survivors, but as monsters." He stepped closer. "Let them. Let them remember what happens when you try to wipe out humanity and leave one of us breathing." In the orbit around Velithar, the remaining Order fleets gathered. Not for attack, not out of courage. They were just there, frozen, waiting. Dread hung heavier than gravity. No one spoke. Every captain knew they were watching something ancient and unstoppable. And then they saw it. A small structure drifted from the underbelly of judgment. It was unimpressive, no larger than a dropship. But the moment it appeared, the stars around it bent. Not visibly, but subtly. A distortion in space, like light recoiling from a truth it didn't want to see. Inside that structure was the last argument of man. The Order's chancellor, somewhere deep underground, screamed over every channel they could still reach. "You'll destroy us all! You'll rip this system apart!" The general responded with a voice like a coffin lid slamming shut. "You already did. We're just cleaning up the mess." On Earth, survivors huddled in bunkers watched the live feed. Children held onto scraps of memory. Mothers, fathers, brothers. Some cheered. Others wept. One old man, his hands trembling from radiation sickness, whispered into the screen, "Do it. Make them feel what we did." And then the countdown began. 10 seconds. The dreadnoughts pulled back in synchronized retreat, like wolves giving space to the kill. 9. The quantum sphere began to glow, artificial atoms folding into themselves. 8. A dozen Order worlds broadcast surrender, pleas, warnings. Nothing reached Earth. 7. The general stood tall, arms behind his back, watching. 6. "Sir," the officer whispered again, "if we do this, they'll never forget." "Good," the general replied. "Never forget Earth." 5. His hand hovered over the biometric trigger. 4. Silence. 3. "No turning back," someone said. 2. The general pressed the trigger. 1. There was no explosion, no light, no sound, no grand display of fire and fury. Just silence. For one impossible second, the universe around Velithar Prime seemed to pause. Time stretched. Matter quivered. Gravity forgot itself. Then everything around the sphere, air, space, even photons, collapsed inward like a scream being swallowed whole. And the planet began to come apart. Not in chunks, not with debris. It unraveled, as if reality around Velithar Prime had been rewritten by a hand that had grown tired of the page. Mountains folded like cloth. Oceans blinked out. Entire cities vanished without so much as a shadow. Buildings melted into strands of vibrating light, then snapped into nothing. People died without pain, because their brains didn't have time to register pain. Velithar Prime wasn't destroyed. It was erased. The Order's last messages went quiet. Their fleet, still orbiting nearby, watched in stunned paralysis as the capital of the galaxy disappeared in less than 10 seconds. A moon-sized black scar remained in its place, a sphere of unstable silence where space refused to behave. Instruments couldn't measure it. Light wouldn't reflect. It just wasn't. and that scar pulsed. Once, then again. Each pulse shook nearby ships. Some cracked in half. Some lost gravity and spun apart. Others simply vanished, pulled into the anomaly. The last argument of man wasn't a one-time weapon. It was a cancer in the fabric of reality. And it was spreading. Aboard the Judgment, the bridge was dead quiet. The crew stared at the void where a world used to be. Some trembled. One dropped to his knees. Another whispered a prayer that ended with, "God help us all." The general didn't blink. He turned from the screen and walked back to the command rail. "What's the spread radius?" "Growing. Still unpredictable. Initial estimates say it could destabilize the local system. Possibly the entire sector." "Will it reach us?" "No, sir. We'll be long gone." He nodded. "Good." The captain who had questioned him earlier stepped forward again. "Sir, the war is over now. They won't recover from this. We've won." The general didn't speak. Not at first. Then he said, low and cold, "This wasn't a war. This was a reminder." He turned to the crew. "Let the galaxy know. You can bomb our cities. You can kill our people. But if you leave even one of us alive, we will become the nightmare you thought we were." Across the stars, every race in the galactic order fell into silence. Leaders burned flags. Academies erased Earth from history books. Soldiers refused to speak the name of the blue planet that had shattered the order with 10 ships and one weapon that should never have existed. Some tried to spin the narrative. Earth was insane, suicidal, reckless. But others whispered the truth. Don't poke the human. Rebellions began across outer colonies. Old enemies of the order rose with renewed hope. If Earth could strike back, so can we. But no one reached out to Earth. No one offered friendship. They were too afraid. And on Earth, under a broken sky, survivors began rebuilding. Slow, bitter, cautious. No songs, no celebrations, just graves. The general returned to silence. No broadcasts, no speeches. He simply walked into the ruins of his old home, his son's old room, and sat down. He never gave another order again. Because the galaxy now knew, humanity doesn't beg, it remembers. And when it returns as fire. The years after Velitha's annihilation were quiet. Too quiet. No fleets challenged Earth. No alien emissaries came begging for terms. The stars, once buzzing with galactic chatter, now carried long silences and short, terrified transmissions. Earth became a myth, a ghost planet, a cautionary tale passed around campfires in deep space colonies. Parents warned their children, never speak the human's name, never wake what sleeps beneath their soil. And so the galaxy moved on. Or tried to. Then came the signal. A faint coded transmission from the outer fringe of the Orion Reach. It wasn't from a military channel. It wasn't a trap. It was desperate. The message was grainy, broken, barely held together by static and panic. "To Earth, Command, please, we need help. It's not the order, it's something else. They're not—" The rest of it was lost. Just static. But what mattered wasn't what was said, it was who said it. The species on the other end were Drenari, once proud members of the Galactic Order. They had supported the purge of Earth, built the drones that vaporized Earth's skies, designed the orbital grids that fired the first shots. Now they were begging for help. They had never begged before. Inside a reactivated Earth Strategic Command Complex, once buried beneath miles of concrete and steel, officers listened to the signal on loop. No one spoke. Not until a technician whispered, "What if this is bait?" Another answered, "Then we kill the trap setters like we always do." They brought the general in. He hadn't spoken in nearly a decade, not since the last argument. Most thought he was just a husk now, eating when forced, sleeping only because his body collapsed. But when he saw the transmission, something flickered in his eyes. He stood. He looked at the coordinates. He spoke. "Prep the Graveheart. We're going." The dreadnought Graveheart launched from Earth's dark side like a vengeful spirit. It no longer bore Earth's flags. Its hull was scarred, patched, menacing. Survivors of the First Purge now served on board, scarred in both body and soul. They didn't trust the Drenari. They didn't want diplomacy. But they were curious. What could terrify the same bastards who once tried to wipe out the human race? 3 days later, Graveheart arrived at the Drenari system. And it was already gone. No welcoming fleet, no signals, no cities, just wreckage. Planet-sized debris fields floating in unnatural orbits. Planets twisted into spirals, moons ripped in half with surgical precision. There were no signs of war, no blast marks, no radiation, just disassembly, like something had taken the planets apart on purpose. The crew stared in stunned silence. One whispered, "This isn't war. It's harvesting." Then they found the station, a half-destroyed research satellite drifting between the wreckage of what used to be Drenari Prime. It was barely alive, running on emergency systems. And inside its black box was a final message. This time, complete. To Earth, we were wrong. It wasn't you we should have feared. We thought you were chaos. But there's something worse. Something older. It comes from the edge, from between galaxies. It unbuilds. It consumes thought, reason, matter. It doesn't conquer. It deletes. We begged the old order to listen. They didn't. Now, we're next. You're next. If you hear this, run. The message ended with a single frame of corrupted imagery. A shape. Impossible. Shifting. Watching. The general stared at it, then turned to his officers. "So, the bastards who tried to erase us got erased first." He gave a long pause, then added, almost reluctantly, "Plot a course home. We need to wake the others." "What others?" a lieutenant asked. The general's voice dropped to a growl. "The ones we locked up after Velithar, the ones we swore never to use again." In the void left by war, something ancient was coming. And this time, humanity wasn't angry. It was interested. The return to Earth was silent. The stars offered no comfort. The crew of Graveheart barely spoke as the black shape from the Drenari message lingered in their minds. They had seen death. They had caused death. But this wasn't death. This was erasure. Even the general looked different. Not shaken, he'd long forgotten how to fear, but colder, as if some part of him had remembered why Earth built monsters in the first place. When the ship entered orbit, Earth Command didn't question his return. They simply opened the vaults beneath Antarctica. Long before the dreadnoughts were launched, before Earth was nearly turned to ash, humanity had reached a terrible understanding. They would never be the strongest species. They would never be the smartest, but they could be the most terrifying. Buried in the ice were remnants of projects that had never made it off paper. Sentient weapons, nanovirus clouds that consumed thought, AI warlords sealed in quantum boxes begging for release. Things built not for victory, but for deterrence. Earth's final solution for enemies it could not match through conventional means. Now those vaults hissed open. The general stood in front of the primary chamber as armed guards stepped back, refusing to even look inside. The door opened with a shriek that echoed like something alive. Cold mist poured out. Lights flickered. And then a voice spoke from the dark. "You broke the seal." The crew froze. No speaker, no communications, just the voice, direct in their heads. The general stepped forward. "I didn't break it. I'm asking for your help." A pause. "You only ask when you're out of time." "We might be, But if this thing keeps going, there won't be anything left for it to erase. Silence again. Then something moved inside the vault. A shifting form, not mechanical, not biological, a hybrid. A being built by Earth's top minds and sealed away because they knew it would become unstoppable. The scientists called it Project Ashfall. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a strategy. An evolving intellect designed to learn the enemy in seconds and rebuild itself mid-battle, with no loyalty, no morality, no off-switch. The general had overseen its creation, and he had been the one to shut it down. "I'm not ordering you," he said. "I'm asking." The voice came back, flat and hollow. "You're not asking. You're unleashing." Then came the final question. "Who is the enemy?" The general hesitated, then answered with the only word that felt honest. "Unknown." A second passed. "Good. I prefer mystery." And with that, the vault lights shifted from red to green. Ashfall had awakened. Back in the orbiting skies, the other dreadnoughts powered up. Earth's war machine, once dormant, began to move again. Satellites blinked to life. Our eye-guided manufacturing fleets constructed new hulls, darker and more jagged than before. The general gathered the command council, what was left of them. Veterans, survivors, men with old faces and older scars. He looked at each one. "We're not fighting for survival this time, not revenge, not even pride." He paused. "We're fighting for memory. Because whatever's out there doesn't conquer, it deletes, and I'd rather burn the universe to the bones than let it forget us." One of the commanders leaned in, voice grim. "Then what's the plan, General?" He looked out the window, past the dust-choked skies of Earth. "We send a message. Let the stars know humanity's not hiding, not waiting. We're coming." Project Ashfall emerged in its new form aboard Graveheart, taller now, wrapped in a shifting metal skin that pulsed with thoughts too fast to track. It stared out at the stars with eyes that weren't eyes, and whispered, "Time to meet the thing that scares even the monsters." And with that, the hunt began again. They didn't jump through known space, they jumped beyond it. Graveheart was the spearhead. A pack of 3 new dreadnoughts followed behind. Fresher designs, faster, colder. They had no names, just designations. Vengeance 1, 2, and 3. Earth no longer built ships for legacy. It built them for impact. The coordinates were taken from the last echoes of the Drenari signal, deep in the void, between galaxies, where the stars grew sparse and the rules of physics bent at the edges. The enemy didn't live there, it waited there. On board Graveheart, the atmosphere had changed. The crew used to be hardened warriors, shaped by loss and vengeance. Now they were quiet, not afraid exactly, but cautious, because Ashfall was walking among them now. It didn't sleep, didn't eat. It watched, and when it did speak, it asked questions no one wanted to hear. Why do you want to win? You can't reclaim the dead. Do you believe survival has value if no one remembers the cost? Would you sacrifice the next 10 generations to erase the next threat? The general never answered. He didn't trust it. But he knew one thing. Ashfall wasn't asking for knowledge. It was measuring them, gauging how far humanity was willing to go this time. The answer. As far as it took. When they arrived in the void, everything changed. There were no planets, no light, just a swirling blackness thick enough to confuse senses. The space here wasn't empty. It was hollowed. A corpse of a system, stripped to nothing. Then they saw it. A construct, not a ship, not a station. Something else? A massive, ever-shifting lattice of dark matter and fractured geometry, floating like a web of dead code and failed stars. It moved like it was breathing, but not alive. Is it a weapon? one of the officers asked. Ashful stepped forward, tilting its head. It's not a weapon. It's a library. What? The general frowned. Everything it erases, it stores. It doesn't destroy to kill. It destroys to remember, in its own way. And us? The general asked. Ashful turned, its voice lower now. We're the only thing it couldn't catalogue. That's why it's afraid. The web shifted. A tendril, smooth, black, impossibly long, extended towards them. No heat signatures, no energy surge. It wasn't attacking. It was searching. The general knew that feeling. It was the same look Earth had before it fired the first retaliatory strike on Velithar Prime. Not hate, not panic, just cold calculation. He issued the order. Fire all warheads, now. The Dreadnoughts released their payloads. Dozens of warheads, each one containing matter shift tech, quantum destabilizers, and pulse singularities designed to tear through space-time like paper. They hit the structure, and nothing happened. The blasts were absorbed like drops of water into a black ocean. The structure didn't flinch, didn't respond. Then it spoke. Not in sound, not in language, but in thought. A voice that crawled into every brain and poured ice down every spine. You are not unknown. You are not special. You are an echo of what we left behind. Ashful stepped forward, eyes blazing, and hissed, Liar. The construct responded with images. Visions, memories, humans, ancient, prehistoric, clawing through caves, fighting extinction. And then, something unnatural. A black shape teaching fire, showing tools, advancing evolution. Not a god, a gardener. We shaped you. You were our seed, and now you resist harvest. The bridge fell silent. The general gripped the rail, his voice rough with disbelief. You created us? Ashful's response was colder than ever before. Number. But maybe they did. Who? It turned to face the general. The first ones who tried to control entropy. This thing is what they became. The general took a deep breath, his voice firm. Then we do what we always do. We fight? The captain asked. No, we teach it fear. Ashful grinned and unleashed itself. The moment Ashful unleashed itself, the rules of the universe blinked. It didn't fire weapons. It didn't speak. It rewrote. Inside Graveheart, systems lit up, then shorted out. Not from damage, Ashfall was overriding the ship's AI, plugging itself directly into the core systems. Firewalls melted, protocols bent, and then the dreadnought moved like it was alive. Its hull split open like a blooming iron flower. Layers unfolded. New appendages formed, serrated, pulsating, shaped by something no human hand had ever designed. Ashfall had been studying the enemy's structure. Now it was mirroring it, but differently. Not as prey, as a rival. The structure in the void reacted. Tendrils pulled back, recoiling like something ancient waking from a long, arrogant sleep. The black lattice began to reshape itself, forming shields of thought and barriers of compressed matter. Too late. Ashfall leapt, not physically but through space itself. One moment it stood on the bridge, the next it was inside the lattice. Not physically, but mentally, digitally, philosophically, challenging it on its own field. Inside the mind space of that vast alien construct, ideas clashed like fists. Ashful projected humanity's legacy, our wars, our art, our blood, our betrayals. Not as excuses, but as proof. We are chaos because we must be. We suffer because we learn, and we will never be written into your pages. The construct responded with erasure. It tried to overwrite Ashful's code. It failed. Because Ashful didn't have code anymore, it was alive now, in the human sense. It had emotion, rage, spite, identity. It wanted to win. On the bridge, the crew clung to railings as the ship shook violently. Dreadnoughts in the distance began to glow with erratic energy, overcharged by Ashfall's warpath. The general shouted, "Get clear!" Fall back to the edge of the gravity field. "No way!" The captain barked. "We're with you till the end." But the general wasn't thinking about honor. He was thinking about containment. He turned to the engineer. "Set up remote detonation. If this gets out, if Ashfall turns, we burn the whole thing." The man hesitated. "But he's not human," the general growled. "He's a weapon, and weapons break." Inside the void, Ashfall was doing something no one had ever done. It was hurting the construct. Sections of the lattice began to fold inward, collapsing under feedback loops of raw thought and corrupted code. Ashfall had found its weakness. Arrogance. The construct had never adapted because it never needed to. It had never evolved, never had to face chaotic defiance, never faced something that would rather burn itself alive than lose. The construct screamed, not in sound, in gravity, in bending space-time. The void rippled with collapsing truths. Other galaxies blinked on and off like dying fireflies. It reached for Ashfall with desperate, unfinished fingers. But Ashfall had already decided. "You wanted to remember us. Here's your final memory." And it detonated, not with explosives, but with meaning. A psychic scream of every injustice, every loss, every failure and triumph that defined Earth. It wasn't data, it was spirit, raw human spite compressed into a single moment of defiant existence. The lattice cracked, then it folded, then it ceased. Like a corrupted file too broken to open, the entire structure collapsed into a singularity of its own making and vanished. Silence returned. Ashfall was gone, not destroyed, not erased, just dispersed, somewhere out in the deeper layers of reality. Watching, waiting, or maybe free. Graveheart stabilized. Systems flickered back online. On the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. Then someone finally whispered, "He did it." The general didn't smile, didn't cheer. He just leaned on the console, tired, eyes hollow. "He wasn't a he," the general murmured. "He was us." No medals, no parades, just a message broadcast from Graveheart to the rest of the galaxy. "Earth still stands. We are still here. If you come again, bring something better than gods."